Okay, we are live on Facebook and YouTube. So, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Michael Music. I am reading Persistence from Think and Grow Rich, and we're going to wrap up this chapter today. So, I'm going to go and repeat something that I read last time in episode 12, which was how to develop persistence, because this is probably the key page of this chapter. And with that being said, I'm going to go over it. So, yeah, a little bit about me. I started reading this book, Think and Grow Rich, when I was 19 years old. And then I was like, okay, there's some good stuff here. And then I found the mentor who has been reading this book for 60 years of his life and teaching it. And another mentor of mine said that the best way to learn something is to teach it. So that's why I'm reading this here today. With that being said, I want to jump right into it because I can share my thoughts at the end of the day. But so yeah, how to develop persistence on page 232. There are four simple steps which lead to the habit of persistence. They call for no great amount of intelligence, no particular amount of education, but little time or effort. The necessary steps are: 1. A definite purpose backed by a burning desire for its fulfillment. 2. A definite plan expressing continuous action. 3. A mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences, including negative suggestions of relatives, friends, and acquaintances. 4. A friendly alliance with one or more persons who will encourage one to follow through with both plan and purpose. So understand that steps one and two is all about having this definite major purpose and a plan to go along with it. One thing I noticed about Napoleon Hill is that everything he says starts out with having your definite major purpose in place. So, what is your definite major purpose? What do you truly want? And and do you have a burning desire to go after it? So that is a important question to ask yourself. And then furthermore, on steps 3 and 4, Napoleon Hill suggests that you have a mind that is closed tightly to all negative outside influences. This could be your friends, family, especially close friends and family, because they may be giving you negative suggestions for the betterment of yourself, but in reality, it could be hurting you if you really believe in what you're going for. And fourth, a mastermind alliance. So, do you have any allies that you are close with, that you trust with your goals and dreams, and they are encouraging you with accountability? They're encouraging you with remaining persistent. Do you have anyone in your life, or is there anyone that you would like to attract into your life that could help you out with that? So, those are the four necessary steps to develop persistence. And furthermore, Napoleon Hill states these four steps are essential for all walks of life. The entire purpose of the principles of this philosophy is to enable one to take these four steps as a matter of habit. These are the steps by which one may control one's economic destiny. They are the steps that lead to freedom and independence of thought. They are the steps that lead to riches in small or great quantities. They lead the way to power, fame, and worldly recognition. They are the four steps which guarantee favorable breaks. They are the steps that convert dreams into physical realities, and they lead also to the mastery of fear, discouragement, and indifference. So that's pretty cool. When you develop persistence and you apply those four steps, you can actually master fear. Okay, Napoleon Hill goes on to say, there's a magnificent reward for all who learn to take these four steps. It is the privilege of writing one's own ticket and making life yield whatever price is asked. I have no way of knowing the facts, but I venture to conjecture that Mrs. Wallace Simpson's great love for a man was not accidental, nor the result of favorable breaks alone. There was a burning desire and careful searching at every step of the way. Her first duty was love. What is the greatest thing on earth? The master called it love. not man made rules, criticism, bitterness, slander, or political marriages, but love. She knew what she wanted, not after she met Prince of Wallace, but long before that. Twice, when she had failed to find it, she had the courage to continue her search. To thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. Her rise from obscurity was the slow, progressive, persistent order, but it was sure. She triumphed over unbelievably long odds, and no matter who you are, or what you may think of Wallace Simpson, or the king who gave up his crown for her love, she is an astounding example of applied persistence, an instructor on the rules of self determination, from whom the entire world might profitably take lessons. When you think of Wallace Simpson, think of one who knew what she wanted and shook the greatest empire on earth to get it. Women who complain that this is a man's world, that women do not have an equal chance to win, owe it to themselves to study carefully the life of this unusual woman, who at an age which most women consider old, captured the affections of the most desirable bachelor in the entire world. And what of King Edward? What lessons may we learn from his part in the world's greatest drama of recent times? Did he pay too high a price for the affections of the woman of his choice? Surely no one but he can give the correct answer. The rest of us can only conjecture. This much we know. The king came into the world without his own consent. He was born to great riches without requesting them. He was persistently sought in marriage. Politicians and statesmen throughout Europe tossed dowagers and princesses at his feet because he was the firstborn of his parents. He inherited a crown which he did not seek and perhaps did not desire. For more than 40 years he was not a free agent, could not live his life in his own way, had but little privacy, and finally assumed duties inflicted upon him when he ascended the throne. Some will say, with all these blessings, King Edward should have found peace of mind, contentment, and joy of living. The truth is that back of all the privileges of a crown, all the money, the fame, and the power inherited by King Edward, there is an emptiness which could be filled only by love. His greatest desire was for love long before he met Wallace Simpson. He doubtless felt that this great universal emotion tugging at the strings of his heart, beating upon the door of his soul and crying out for an expression. And when he met a kindred spirit crying out for this same holy privilege of expression, he recognized it and without fear or apology opened his heart and bade it enter. All the scandalmongers in the world cannot destroy the beauty of this international drama, through which people found love and had the courage to face open criticism, renounce all else to give it holy expression. King Edward's decision to give up the crown of the world's most powerful empire for the privilege of going the remainder of the way through life with the woman of his choice was a decision that required courage. The decision also had a price, but who was to say that the price was too great? Surely not he who said, "He among you who is without sin, let him cast the first stone," as a suggestion to any evil-minded person who chooses to find fault with the Duke of Windsor because his desire was for love and for openly declaring his love for Wallace Simpson and giving up his throne for her. Let it be reminded that the open declaration was not essential. He could have followed the custom of clandestine liaison which has prevailed in Europe for centuries, without giving up either his throne or the woman of his choice, and there would have been no complaint for either the church or the laity. But this unusual man was built of sterner stuff. His love was clean, it was deep and sincere, it represented one thing which above all else he truly desired. Therefore, he took what he wanted and paid the price demanded. If Europe had been blessed with more rulers with the human heart and the trait of honesty of ex King Edward for the past century, that unfortunate hemisphere now seething with greed, hate, lust, political connivance, and threats of war would have a different and a better story to tell. A story in which love and not hate would rule. In the words of Stuart Austin Weir, we raise our cup and drink to this toast to ex King Edward and Wallace Simpson. Blessed is the man who has come to know that our muted thoughts are our sweetest thoughts. Blessed is the man who, from the blackest depths, can see the luminous figure of love, and seeing sing and say, sweeter far than uttered lees are the thoughts I have of you. In these words, would we pay tribute to the two people who, more than all others of modern times, have been the victims of criticism and recipients of abuse because they found life's greatest treasure and they claimed it. Most of the world will applaud the Duke of Windsor and Wallace Simpson because of their persistence in searching until they found life's greatest reward. All of us can profit by following their example in our own search for that which we demand of life. Okay, now this section I'm about to read is really important. So keep your ears and eyes open to this. What mystical powers gives men of persistence the capacity to master difficulties? Does the quality of persistence set up in one's mind some form of spiritual, mental, or chemical activity which gives one access to supernatural forces? Does infinite intelligence throw itself on the side of the person who still fights on after the battle had been lost, with the whole world on the opposing side? These and many other similar questions have arisen in my mind as I have observed men like Henry Ford, who started at scratch and built an industrial empire of huge proportions with little else in the way of beginning but persistence, or Thomas A. Edison, who, with less than 3 months of schooling, became the world's leading inventor and converted persistence into the talking machine, the moving picture machine, and the incandescent light, to say nothing of a half a hundred of other useful inventions. I had the happy privilege of analyzing both Mr. Edison and Mr. Ford year after year, over a long period of years, and therefore the opportunity to study them at close range. So I speak from actual knowledge when I say that I found no quality save persistence in either of them that either remotely suggested the major source of their stupendous achievements. As one makes an impartial study of the prophets, philosophers, miracle men, and religious leaders of the past, one is drawn to the inevitable conclusion that persistence, concentration of effort, and definiteness of purpose were the major sources of their achievement. So there's that definiteness of purpose again that keeps popping up. Just keep an eye out for that. Consider, for example, the strange and fascinating story of Muhammad. Analyze his life, compare him with men of achievement in this modern age of industry and finance, and observe how they have one astounding trait in common: persistence. If you are keenly interested in studying the strange power which gives potency to persistence, read a biography of Muhammad, especially the one by Asad Bey. This brief review of that book by Thomas Sugrue in the Herald Tribune will provide a preview of the rare treat in store for those who take the time to read the entire story of one of the most astounding examples of the power of persistence known to civilization. Cool. So I'm going to wrap this chapter up by reading The Last Great Prophet, written and reviewed by Thomas Segru. It's about this guy named Muhammad, who is really special to the development of the Quran in wherever he's from. And it's cool. It's cool how deep this story goes because I'm not sure about you guys, but I haven't had to experience anything where I was banished from my own community for believing in something so deeply. So, yeah, keep in mind what factors of persistence he had in common. And also, when I read this story, keep in mind the fact that even though everyone was against him, he was still able to close his mind tightly to negative influences and continue on with his purpose. So, I'm going to read this story. And yeah, just keep those things in mind as I read through it. So, The Last Great Prophet, reviewed by Thomas Segru. Muhammad was a prophet, but he never performed a miracle. He was not a mystic, he had no formal schooling, he did not begin his mission until he was 40. When he announced that he was the messenger of God, bringing word of true religion, he was ridiculed and labeled a lunatic. Children chirped him, and women threw filth upon him. He was banished from his native city, Mecca, and his followers were stripped of their worldly goods and sent into the desert after him. When he had been preaching 10 years, he had nothing to show for it but banishment, poverty, and ridicule. So keep in mind, he was preaching for 10 years his beliefs. And imagine going 10 years preaching a philosophy and being banished. Like you have nothing to show for it. You have nothing, you have no riches, you're poor, you're banished, and you've been made fun of all for it. So as I read this book, that's interesting for me to keep in mind. Yet, before another 10 years had passed, he was dictator of all Arabia, ruler of Mecca, and the head of a new world religion, which was to sweep the Danube and the Pyrenees before exhausting the impetus he gave it. That impetus was threefold: the power of words, the efficiency of prayer, and the man's kinship with God. His career never made sense. Muhammad was born to impoverished members of a leading family of Mecca. Because Mecca, the crossroads of the world, home of the magic stone called the Kaaba, great city of trade and the center of trade routes, was unsanitary, its children were sent to be raised in the desert by Bedouins. Muhammad was thus nurtured, drawing strength and health from the milk of nomad, vicarious mothers. He tended sheep and soon hired out to a rich widow as leader of her caravans. He traveled to all parts of the Eastern world, talked with many men of diverse beliefs, and observed the decline of Christianity into warring sects. When he was 28, Khadijah, the widow, looked upon him with favor and married him. Her father would have objected to such a marriage, so she got him drunk and held him up when he gave the paternal blessing. For the next 12 years, Muhammad lived as a rich and respected and very shrewd trader. Then he took to wandering in the desert, and one day he returned with the first verse of the Quran and told Khadijah that the archangel Gabriel had appeared to him and said that he was to be the messenger of God. The Quran, the revealed word of God, was the closest thing to a miracle in Muhammad's life. He had not been a poet, he had no gift of words, yet the verses of the Quran, as he received them and recited them to the faithful, were better than any verses which the professional poets of the tribes could produce. This, to the Arabs, was a miracle. To them, the gift of words was the greatest gift. The poet was all powerful. In addition, the Quran said that all men were equal before God and that the world should be a democratic state, Islam. It was this political hearsay plus Muhammad's desire to destroy all the 360 idols in the courtyard of the Kaaba, which brought about his banishment. The idols brought the desert tribes to Mecca, and that meant trade. So the businessmen of Mecca, the capitalists of which he had been one, set upon Muhammad. Then he retreated to the desert and demanded sovereignty over the world. The rise of Islam began. Out of the desert came a flame which would not have been extinguished, a democratic army fighting as a unit and prepared to die without wincing. Muhammad had invited the Jews and Christians to join him, for he was building a new religion. He was calling all who believed in one God to join in a single faith. If the Jews and the Christians had accepted his invitation, Islam would have conquered the world. They didn't. The Jews and Christians didn't. They would not even accept Muhammad's innovation of humane warfare. When the armies of the Prophet entered Jerusalem, not a single person was killed because of his faith. When the Crusaders entered the city centuries later, not a Muslim man, woman, or child was spared. But the Christians did accept one Muslim idea: the place of learning, the university. So that is the end of the chapter on persistence. And I guess some questions that come up for me as I read through it. So it's all relative, right? What you're really persistent towards. So we just read a story of two stories, and one of them included this man, Muhammad, who believed that he was the messenger of God. And for 10 years, he persisted in preaching his philosophy. However, all he had to show for it was punishment, banishment, and poverty. So imagine you're you're sticking up for something you believe in, and you go 10 years, and that's all you have to show for it. You have no real traction going. However, you decide that you're going to persist through, and within another 10 years, you are now the leading ruler of Mecca. How cool is that? So that's really interesting to think because for me personally, I'm basically sharing this philosophy of this book because I believe in this philosophy. I don't believe it just as a book. And it's like, am I willing to persist reading this every day for a whole 10 years with nothing to really show for it? And I'm not going to get banished. I'm not going to get exiled or anything like that. So it's all relative. But that's really interesting to think about. Like, am I willing to do anything relatively near that? So keep in mind it's all relative. Uh, I'm sure you guys have your own goals in mind. So what is something that you're persistent on? And even though it may have seemed like the most difficult task in the world, what is that relative compared to this man who claimed to be the messenger of God and got banished for all those years? What is that relative to Napoleon Hill, who spent 25 years of his life writing this book? It really is all relative, and it's interesting for me to think about. And then furthermore, besides the persistence part, we talked about in the beginning on how to develop persistence, what it meant when to close your mind tightly to all negative and outside influences. So going back to the story of, I think it was Wallace Simpson's and King Henry III or King Edwards. I forget what the king's name was, but I'll just call him the king and Wallace Simpson. So they had to persist, and in order to do so, they had to close their minds tightly to all negative influences outside of them. And it's interesting to think about because, like, you're the king, you have it all, and everyone's like saying to you, like, why are you making this decision? It makes so much sense. You got all your friends, your relatives suggesting into your mind that, oh, you should just stick with like being the king, bro. You got it all. Like, why would you? And so he persisted, but the way he did was he had a definite purpose, which was to marry this woman that he truly loved and marry her in the right way. He had a plan to do it, and he implemented that plan by just stepping down from the throne, being like, I'm going all in. Like, this is what I truly want. He closed his mind tightly to all negative outside influences because all these people were probably chirping in his ear, like, oh, you gotta listen to us. Like, we're your family, bro. Like, all this stuff. And he was like, nah, like, this is what I truly want. And then finally, I think the fourth step, so it was third step was a mind closed tightly to all negative influences, and then I forget what the fourth step was. Oh, a mastermind alliance. So it's interesting. We're gonna read upon this in, I think it's the next chapter on sex transmutation. But he, like, two of the best mastermind alliances you can have is between your a husband and a wife. Like there's some conversations that will happen between those two people that you can really, like, all you need is true minds to form a mastermind alliance. So he formed his mastermind alliance with Wallace Simpson's and implemented these four steps and didn't have to deal with anything regarding stopping him from getting his goal. So that's pretty cool to know. Today to recap, we learned about the four steps to how to develop persistence, and we read two incredible stories showing just what persistence can lead to, and they're both unique in their nature because one story, it may not seem like from the outside it looks like that's what someone would truly want, but hey, it was what they truly wanted and they persisted in their goal. And then the second story was someone who persisted for 10 years with no credibility or resume built up, and he kept persisting. And within the next 10 years, he was now the ruler of Mecca. So this book, when I read the stories, because I used to read just the beginning half of them and stop reading the stories, I started reading the stories again live, and I realized, holy crap, like these stories are so big. Like they are so big. So this is interesting to think big. So with that being said, we're wrapping up 25 minutes. I love for you guys to share at the end of this one thing you learned, one thing you liked. Please drop that in the chat. And furthermore, the next chapter I think I'll be reading will be The Power of the Mastermind. So this is some good stuff that's coming. The mastermind is key to this philosophy. It has been beneficial to me to keep going and reading this book. Yeah, I can't wait to get into that. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Some plugins. Subscribe to me on YouTube if you want to continue studying this book with me. I got a Facebook group called Think and Grow Rich with Michael Music. And yeah, join those. I want to get started going live in the Facebook groups. And yeah, with that being said, I wanted to thank you guys for giving me the time to watch this, and I will see you at the next event. Bye for now. All right, peace out, YouTube.